Let's make sure that my mic is set up properly. I think it is. I think it is. Ah! You know, you take a week away and you forget how to do stuff. Ah, there I am. Hello, guys. How are you? It is good to be back. Let's see. I messed up all my settings having been away. Yay! Okay, glad you can hear me. Uh-oh. Let me try to turn everything up. Okay. My computer decides to do things while I'm gone, so. Oh my gosh, we have a full house today. Mondays are popular. I think I said this last time I saw you guys. You like to play hooky from work. Mishral, I think I saw that you don't have any meetings right now, so I'm so glad you're here. So let me say hello to everybody. Druid, thank you, my dear. I've missed you. Robin was our big winner last night on quilt nerding for the week 4. That was exciting. See, Mishral, so glad you're here. Kellen, Kenny, hey buddy, it's been a minute. I know you were in the process of moving, maybe. Okay. Everybody is saying volume is weird. Let me try this. How about this? Is that any better? Well, okay. I'll do my best to shout. My computer's like, you're back and you're screaming and you're flailing and yeah, so time zones, y'all. You know, when I went to California back in February, of course, I came home sick. Or no, I didn't. That was Raleigh I came home sick from. No, when I came home in February, I was super busy and I was getting ready to go to QuiltCon. So yeah, I don't think I really ever felt the time zone. I was just like, keep going, keep going, keep going. But this time I was at a retreat, of course, if you didn't know. And I had just gotten used to West Coast time. I was, you know, not waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I had to leave and I came back home. And you know, if you've ever traveled across country, you guys know how this goes. Going west is always easier because you feel good about yourself. You're like, oh wow, look at me. I could get up at 6 o'clock in the morning with no problem. And then you come east and you're like, oh, it feels like it's noon, but it's really midnight. So, and of course, you know, I'm all discombobulated with my technology. So yeah, my intro extro music is way louder than your stream. Yeah, you know, it's because it's 2 different audio sources. And so I need to mess around with it a little bit. Let me turn off my desktop audio. Maybe that'll help some too. You don't get any interference there. And, oh look, I have a cat joining us. Which one is it? The second one today. They don't know what to do with themselves because they haven't seen me in a week. So anyway, today, let me turn off this fan too. Maybe that'll help as well. Today is just going to sort of be a discombobulated show and tell because a bunch of stuff happened this weekend. Jill has added streams. She asked me, you know, midweek last week, hey, can we start a new stream on Wednesday? And I'm like, sure. So, yeah, prepping for that. And, yeah, I just, a lot going on. So I hope you guys will be happy with just a show and tell today. The other thing about the retreat is, you know, part of it is people sharing their research and things. So, oh, hi, Save the Pieces. Welcome, welcome. I don't know if this is your first time. You're definitely a first-time chatter. So I'm so glad you're here. So, are you somebody I know, by the way? You'll have to let me know. If you don't want to reveal yourself here, you can reveal yourself in a direct message to me. So, so yeah, where was I? So the thing about this retreat, oh, Arlene, hello, Hello. Arlene is my dear friend who was a helper at the retreat, and I got to meet her in person for the first time, and that was so fun. Um, and Rebecca, I don't know if Rebecca has made it here or not, but she's another person that I've met online, by virtue of quilty friends. And then, when you get to meet your quilty friends in person, it's like you've known each other forever. It's so wonderful. So, anyway, the one of the challenging things about a retreat that has, programming related to it is, just kind of like going to a conference. You're not supposed to take pictures and share them worldwide, and this is other people's research and other people's quilts in their collection that they're doing things with. So, kind of limited in what I can show you guys as far as like what was there. But I know Mary Kay was one of the presenters, and she is very like show it all. So I have some pictures of the quilts that she had with her, so I can show those and tell you a little bit about her research, because it might be something you guys might want to look up and look into, some sort of interesting stuff. So I've really just got a pile of things here on my desk. It's literally a heap to show you, and I have a few pictures to show, and you may have seen some of it on my Instagram already. I posted a little reel, and let's see what else. So I guess a couple things here at the top of the show. Things are back to normal here, sort of. I'm here Mondays and Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, for all of my my newbies. And I am also over on Quilt Nerding, which, to give you some backstory, because I know there are some new folks watching, Quilt Nerd was a program, or a stream, a show, or whatever you want to call it, started by Mary Fonz. I want to say it was was it 2021, you guys? Robin's been around since the beginning. I'm like drawing a blank. It was either 21 or 22. Mary started this thing, and it was really, really fun. And we did it for 2 years, and I ended up helping her do the on-screen production, on-air production. Robin was her, 2021 sounds right. Yeah, so Robin was her membership person, and some things changed in Mary's life, so she went on hiatus, and that was at the end of last year. And so my friend Jill and I, and you know Jill if you've been to Quilt Nerding, we were kind of like, the community is just going to be like sad, and we don't want everybody to disband, and we want to keep doing things. So with Mary's blessing, we started Quilt Nerding. And, it's for folks that either don't really have time to come here to what I do, or are not interested in what I do, because typically I read books. The last, oh gosh, a lot this year I haven't read. I've done other stuff, museum shows, all kinds of things. But the purpose of this show really was to read the old quilt books and get people interested in quilt history and learning, about material culture and things. And Quilt Nerding is, it's a Tuesday night thing. We started it in place of Mary's Tuesday night thing. And it kind of turned into a book club. And so we've got that going on. And we're just finishing up our friend, and I think I took it over to my little spot on the couch because I was looking at it last night. But our friend Dawn Ronigan, we just finished her book, which is Antique American Needlework Tools, and so she kind of upped our game for us. Well, we realized people really like the needlework tools, as do we, and we decided to start and try a needlework nights. So that's the new thing that's on the calendar. This remains for now. What you see is what you get with Stephanie Cake. Sometimes I come here and I ramble and stuff, and sometimes I read things, and sometimes we have amazing discoveries. You never know what's going to happen. It is live. So, well, without further ado, let me just start showing you some stuff. The retreat that I was on was in Temecula, California, which is, I guess it's about an hour and 15 or so northeast of San Diego. And I visited San Diego before. It's I was there in February, but I didn't leave very far from the airport. I was at a different kind of conference. But when I really traveled San Diego was back in like 1993. I was in college, and some girlfriends and I drove cross country, much to my mother's dismay, and we stayed in San Diego for, gosh, almost a week, and went down into Tijuana and all the things that stupid young people do. But I had not really traveled a whole lot outside of San Diego, and so I really wasn't sure what to expect of Temecula. I know it's kind of deserty when you get away from the coast, but Temecula was just had like a different sort of, like, it wasn't coastal, of course, but it's not deserty necessarily either. I mean, it's greener than desert, but it's desertier than the coast, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. It was foggy in the morning sometimes, which kind of surprised me. And it was just so pretty. And the retreat center where we stayed is a Catholic facility that I believe that there are some elderly nuns that sort of retire there, and I think they do Catholic families events, and priests go to events and things like that. But it is also used by a good number of quilt guilds in the area for retreats and things. And of course, our friend Leah Zieber, who is based out of Temecula, she started this retreat 8 years ago, and she gets the same week every year at this facility. And so I was so excited to be invited this year, and my mom went with me. And some good friends were there, and some new friends were there. And so it was really, really fun. And, this is one of those things that, there's costs associated with going to events like this. There's all the travel and all the stuff. So these are kind of special things I do. I don't go to things like this very often. I feel like this year there's been a lot because I went to QuiltCon, and I'm getting ready to go up to something in Pennsylvania that's more of like a weekend thing. But anyway, these are the things that I put little dollars away to do. And I feel very fortunate that I get to do these things, because I know it's out of the realm for some people. Just, you got families, you got jobs, all that kind of stuff. So I am really grateful to be able to do this and to share as much of it as I possibly can with you guys. So, because, what's the next best thing to being there is hearing about it and window shopping it. So, yeah, so that's what it was all about. And our speakers were Mary Kay Waldvogel, who is a good friend of mine, and I love her so much. And then Xenia Cord, who is another very well-known, very well-respected quilt collector, dealer, researcher. Her research was so interesting. I could show you kind of a little bit of it, but she had quilts there that folks were not okay with being shared on the internet. So unfortunately, this is the internet. So anyway, but I can kind of tell you later on like what her stuff was about, because I don't have the Marie Webster book in front of me, but one of her pieces was, or her lectures was about a particular type of quilt, and one of them is on the Marie Webster book, on the cover of the Marie Webster book. And so I just blew my mind how many quilts out there have this particular motif on it, is what she talked about. And then she talked about signature quilts, which also are very interesting to all of us. And you see behind me, I have one. I don't know if I've told you guys about this one. However, if you were around for the auction that Jill and I watched recently, you will recognize this, because Jill bought it at auction, and I immediately said, and I picked them up. I picked them up for her because it was the Eastern Maryland, the Eastern Shore auction. I picked this up and said, well, you're not getting it because I'm going to buy it from you. So this is a very cool signature quilt. And, the person who put it up for auction doesn't know much about it. So this is an opportunity for me to maybe do a little bit of genealogy work and find out who these people are. There are some unique names on here. Do you know very many Bessie Plunks? You probably don't. So I suspect she's going to be good to find, right? She's going to be, I think there's another Plunk on here too. So, and we know that this is probably, 1930s, 1940s-ish. So anyway, all the things. So, yeah. Now, Mary Kay's pieces, her presentations were about the Walker sisters, which I'll tell you about in a minute, and chintz quilts. The quilt has a lot of plunk. It sure does. Um, so you guys have maybe heard me say in the past, I don't love chintz. I still don't love chintz, but I have a newfound interest in chintz. And I will explain why in a minute because I have things I bought and have taken pictures of that I can show you. They don't have to be secret. So let's see. Let me start with my little slideshow. Let me see if I can pull that up. Oh, first of all, let me see if. All right, come on now. Don't you love it when technology is like, nah, not today. Not today, Bob. Okay, here we go. All right, now let me do my other screen. Oh. Okay, so this is from the parking lot of the retreat center. So if you've never been to this part of California, this little quick little clip I took, um, I mean, it's just beautiful. It's wine country. Let me play it again. And what you're looking at are, so you can see as I'm panning over here, those are vineyards that this retreat is like right on this road that has a ton of vineyards on it. I had no idea until I talked to Leah about going here that there were all of these vineyards there in this part of California. I had no idea. Um, I always thought of, wine country in California as being, Napa. That's to me like that's the wine country I think of, but they have a good deal of that in this area. And I guess California is just one of those places that has, different different ecosystems, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, that are good. Some parts of it are really good for agriculture. And I think this area just happens to be, works for grapes just like it does in Northern California. So that was interesting. I'm not a wine person, but it was really neat just driving through there and you see like, these beautiful, plots of vineyard and, the vines and things, they're short little things. But it's just very pretty there and, like rolling mountainy hills and all that stuff and lots of green. It was really pretty. So this, I did post this on my Instagram too, but this is from my dear friend Rebecca. She knows that I am gooning out on all things Sunbonnet Sue, and there's more Sunbonnet Sue for me to show you. But she brought me this sweet little needle book, this little Sue needle book. You can see it's all just, and it's never been used. I'm guessing it's probably, I don't know, sometime between the 60s and today. So yeah, so many of the residents grow grapes and sell them to the local wineries. Yeah, that makes total sense to me. It's funny. I'm not a wine person, but my grandfather grew grapes for whatever reason. I don't know why. Like it was one of those things he wanted to grow grapes. And so, my grandparents were in Virginia and my grandfather had this beautiful, very long grapevine that he had sort of wrapped around his garden. And he tended the grapes differently, I think, than they do like in a vineyard, like where they're, growing grape for wine. Those seem like they're shorter, like if you stand next to them, they're short. And the grapes grow, but my grandfather had them as more of like an arbor. So, you could go under there and it'd be like nice and shady on a summer day. And, I guess it was towards the fall when the grapes get ripe and, my grandmother would make gallons and gallons of grape juice, grape jelly. Ironically, they didn't drink, so they didn't make wine. So anyway, so Rebecca gave this to me like when I first got there and I'm like, I barely walked into this retreat and I already get presents. That's the beautiful thing about when you go to retreats is people, are so generous. And this is Rebecca, and I didn't tell her I was going to show this off, but I hope she's not mad at me. But this was her with her copy of Antique American Needlework and Tools because she was reading along in our book club. But you can see, we had tables. We had like a big sewing room. And so, Leah had the tables laid out so that we each shared an 8-foot table. So you had like a little 4-foot section for yourself. You could spread all your sewing things out. And we had lots of downtime to socialize and sew. And so that's kind of also why I'm showing this picture, so you can see that. We had goodie bags and, all kinds of treats and treasures. And everybody was working on just beautiful, fascinating hand sewing projects. So this was a crowd that, not only is into quilt history, because, there's lots of quilt historians that don't sew and don't make quilts. And, I'm always like, well, gosh, that's weird to me, but it's not. It's not. I love paintings, but I don't paint. So it's the same thing to me. I can be into a thing, but not actually do the thing. I like to watch hockey. I do not play hockey. But this group of folks definitely were all stitchers. They were all sewing in our downtime, and they were working on so many amazing and beautiful projects. And so then the theme of it was, and I did not bring my pattern. There was a theme that Leah had created, and we had a pattern to go with it. But this was her big presentation the first night we got there. And I think this is the one. Ooh. So this is the original. This is the original quilt. This was this very interesting quilt that she had bought. Abigail's quilt, yes. And it, hey, Bird Nerd. Hey, so glad to see you. I was just thinking about you the other day. Actually, Mary mentioned you. And I was wondering what you've been up to. I'm glad to see you. So anyway, yes, Abigail's quilt. This was this quilt she found, and I believe she bought it at Brimfield, right? Yeah, Kathy, I saw Mary this past week, and she was talking about some of her research, and she and Mary Kay had a long discussion about her research, and she mentioned some of the genealogical stuff that she'd worked with you on. So we're all nerds here. So anyway, Abigail's quilt, I think Leah found it at Brimfield. It's a very just pretty unique looking quilt. It's in really good condition. It's old, in good condition. The coloring of it, of course, is off. Like it's this faded sort of, brownish tan background. It was probably originally white. But this is the original. And then Leah and some friends remade the quilt. And she's currently patterning it, so if it's speaking to you, you too will be able to make this quilt in the future if you'd like. But it's so fascinating. She looked and she sort of researched, like what could each of these flowers type, what are each of these flowers? What are they, botanically? And what could Abigail have been referencing in this pot? And some of these motifs that just during that time period that Abigail was making the quilt, what these, these images that were really popular then. And so she's going into, and her research is not done. She's just at the tip of the iceberg, really. And so she shared all this with us, and I just was so fascinated. So that was the one beautiful thing we got to look at. And, I've written it down, which was which, and now I want to say, Arlene, you might know. I think this might be Leah's. I wrote this down. I'm usually better than this. So this is the third one. So yeah, so this one is Leah's, right? I'm terrible. I think this one is her friend Kay, or her friend Diane. And then this is hers. And then I think this is the other. So Leah and her friends Kay and Diane did these quilts. So anyway, I think once she gets them patterned, she'll have information out. And, that's something to keep an eye out for. You'll see a pattern like this one day and you'll go, I've seen that before. So we'll have to, when Leah comes out with it, I'll have to let everybody know. Okay. Oh, you guys, the chintz. I wish Molly was here. Maybe we could conjure her, because Molly and I always joke about the chintz. Everybody loves the chintz, and I'm just like, ooh, the chintz. Well, You guys, I have a newfound appreciation for the chintz. So what is here are some medallions. They're chintz medallions, and some of these are reproductions. Some of them are like original, but this was Mary Kay's little spread of chintz panels. And um, what these are is, so if you know anything about chintz quilts, glazed chintz, it was a big deal. The chintz coverlets, all this stuff. Florence Petto looked at chintz quilts. Dr. Dunton looked at them. The chintz coverlets all seem to be like the thing we look at before we move on to the early 19th century when we're looking at quilt history. And often you will see things that where it was a very large chintz print that came out of the block printing of in India. The East Indies, the company, the British, the colonists, they brought all that stuff, the colonizers, and it got very popular in England and here. And what they would do is they would do something called broderie perce, where they would cut out the individual little flowers, and often you'll see these like big grand peacocks and things like that, and they'd snip it all out and they'd very carefully applique it down to create like these new looks, these new patterns. And I think part of it, the intent was to stretch a smaller piece of fabric as much as they possibly could. They'd applique these things down to a much larger piece. And some of them were very, very detailed and just stunning. But still not my jam. Now, what these are, this was something else. This was not actually broderie perce in these. What people would do when they got these, and what the theory is like they were printing these in the UK and, I think probably in France some too. And then this stuff kind of got dumped on the U.S. as, in the colonies, or, us a number of years after the Revolutionary War. And with all of the embargoes and the trade barriers and whatnot, folks here were probably happy to get some stuff. And needleworkers went crazy for these. And what they would do is they'd cut them apart. And you could see in here, there's the central medallion, and then they have these corner things. And in some cases, they have this wreath. And those three pieces, that central, the wreath or the ring, and then those corners are kind of like the hallmarks of these chintz medallions. And they would cut those three pieces apart, and they would do interesting things with them. And so Mary Kay had this, tons and tons and tons of examples. And she has literally done some research to the level of she's got numbers. She's literally found, these aren't just random chintz patterns. They have specific names. So this one back here is the flower basket, I think. There's a fruit basket. There's one, and I think I should have the picture of it in here. Oh, here, this one. This is like a armaments kind of things. It's it's weapons. You got this quiver of arrows and this hunting horn and a shield and all this stuff. So these images keep showing up, and they show up in quilts. And so Mary Kay has literally numbered them, and she's documented all of these quilts she's found that utilize these patterns. And other things they would do that were different were, as an example here, this is the piecing that goes around the medallion. Crud. Here we go. Sorry. I just needed to to zoom out. But see, this is something I had never seen before, where they've taken, this is the panel as is, they haven't cut it apart, plunk it right in the middle of the quilt, and then they put this beautiful piecing around it. You don't see that in what you think of as your standard chintz quilt. Your standard chintz quilt has a very different look than this, even though these medallions and things and the flowers and stuff are very, very similar. And I did a crappy job with these, but so this is actually broderie perce in this particular piece, where they have applied these. This would be the center part of the medallion, and they've gotten enough of them and been able to apply them in rows across the quilt. And I want to see these kind of go in a border, as a border situation. this fruit border is really, really, really popular. This one, I actually found a piece of it in Dr. Dunton's archives. And I remember when I saw it, and I knew Mary Kay had done some of this work, although I didn't quite understand what the chintz medallions were, but I knew that she had studied quilts that used this fruit basket, fruit border and fruit basket. And Dr. Dunton had documented it in 5 different quilts, and 3 of them are in his book. Of course, they're black and white. It's kind of hard to see. You kind of have to really look down and know what you're looking for. But then I found the actual piece of fabric in his collection. So remember, Mary Kay was like, how exciting. And she too has documented them. So, this is another one of those like point in time kind of things, where this is just a very specific kind of thing that that women were doing, makers were doing. They were by and large women, of course. But gosh darn it, there were some chintz items for sale. So first of all, let me go back to my full screen so I can show and tell a little bit. So these are some of those panels that are reproductions. And although I told Mary Kay, I'm not going to study chintz, I'm not going to start collecting chintz quilt, but I would very much like to try some chintz stuff. So I bought these panels. Leah actually had some yardage and some panels, and I think these are Andover that made these. So they're new. They're within the last few years, I think. So again, like cutting out this ring thing and then cutting out this thing in the middle, this medallion in the middle, and then the corners. And what people did with them were really surprising. So I want to do this. I want to, and even if I don't like sew it together into some, thing and quilt it, I think the idea of clipping these pieces apart and figuring out how to put them back together in new ways. And as an example, I could tell you, this ring part here, there's one quilt where they had taken the ring, cut the ring out, and then put it back together so that it made like scallops, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do with this, like really creative things to do with this. So that's what I wanted to give that a shot and try that out. And of course, you guys know I love neon, so you can expect to see perhaps some neon pink or neon green or like acid yellow in here. But yeah, and so unfortunately the quilts that I really want to show, I don't have permission to show. So I'm going to look through, I think she mentioned one of the books that has some of this stuff in it. And when I have more of a minute, I'm going to look in there and see. And then maybe I can do a little segment to show you like what I'm doing and what, what these look like. And then what some quilts that look like this are. So the chintz. Now the Triplet sisters were there. Lori Lee and Kay Triplet. And they have some amazing stuff. They have looked at some of the chintz-esque things that were happening, not just in the UK, France, and the US, but also down in the islands. So they have some nifty things they've looked at. And this is an example of one. And I purchased one of their little medallions. And it's this. Oh, it's their business card. So this is what it looks like. And these were these sort of chintz prints from Bermuda and the islands. And if I remember correctly, Lori told me that she actually painted this. This is not based on a real, an existing or extant print, but she painted this, as a inspired by. So this is something else to look at. And they had a couple of other ones here. Let me show you. This one is called Guardians of the Nest. This is an example of one that's octagonal. So again, you see you've got these corners, the corner motifs, and then you have the medallion in the center, and then in this one, of course, the ring is octagonal shaped. And so this is what Guardians, I think they got these printed like through Spoonflower, which is like really brilliant. You know, you get some nice stuff printed. So Guardians of the Nest would be one very common one. And then the fruit basket. Where'd you go? Where did you go, fruit basket? Here. This is the reproduction of the fruit basket. And so this one I will probably not do anything with because it's the reproduction of the what Dr. Dutton had looked at, and so I kind of keep this one uncut and just in my collection of things. You know, that collection of things that I have so much room for. All right, so that's the chintz. Oh, the chintz. All right, so let's go back to the other screen. Okay, so the next thing, stamps. Oh my gosh, you guys. There is there was an attendee. Her name is Pat. I think she's from California too. She had this amazing collection of signature stamps. And what these would have been for is stamping using ink, like indelible ink. You know, Dr. Dutton did some research on that. What was when they came out with indelible ink, because India ink is not necessarily indelible. It does fade, whereas in the early 1830s, a company called Payson's started making an indelible ink. It didn't fade, it didn't wash out. So that is when these kind of things like, you know, exploded on the scene. People that didn't really have drawing skills could get these stamps and stamp blocks. And you guys, look what I have. And I'm going to show you another thing. I have some little blocks stamped. Oops, let me go back so you can see these a better. So this is a little stamped block. Now, here's the interesting thing. These were not stamped with one of these blocks. These were stamped with rubber stamps. This was brilliant. Now, I mentioned these last night if you were at our off-schedule quilt nerding last night. I mentioned these. Susan McKelvey was a quilter who did a lot of work. She's got a number of books out, and she did a lot of work with the kind of friendship quilts and signature quilts and those kind of things. So you can look her up. I think there's a bunch of her books on A-Books. Unfortunately, she has passed away. And from what I understand, these rubber stamps came out in like the early aughts. So like 2008, maybe. I looked around to see if they're available somewhere, you know, to buy some used or something, but no luck so far. I'm sure that the people that maybe have, you know, purchased these over the years, you know, probably use them or, you know, have them in their collections. But rubber stamps are a dime a dozen at this point in time from the craft perspective. So I'm kind of thinking at some point I may run across these. And so keep your eyes out. I have a ton of rubber stamps I've been trying to get rid of forever. And it's like you can't even pay people to take them. I guess rubber stamps are just not, like, people are not super into making cards and scrapbooks and stuff with rubber stamps anymore. But I just keep thinking somebody out there has these. And somewhere along the line, they're going to turn up available. So I'm hoping to get my hands on some. There's a whole set of them. I think Leah probably had, I don't know, there was like 6 or 8 different ones, I think. So yeah, kids are the only ones that like stamps anymore, I know. And you know, the crazy thing is, I mean, not to digress, but I have some beautiful rubber stamps. And, you know, they make fabric, you know, fabric ink for stamping. So I keep thinking, maybe I'll pull out the ones I have that are, um, you know, just pretty stuff. Not, I probably have some Disney ones, stuff like that. Yeah, nobody wants that stuff. But pretty things like this that could maybe work in a quilt for like a signature quilt kind of thing. But anyway, Leah in our goodie bag had given us a big stack of white squares. And my mom ended up getting lots of folks to sign. She stamped her squares, got lots of folks to sign. I did not have folks sign mine simply because I know I'm not going to make a signature quilt anytime soon. So, I have high hopes for the people that are going to, and I know that my signature will be in those quilts. So, yes, that was one fun thing. Let's see, what else do I want to show you? Oh, let's go back to some of Mary Kay's stuff. I realize I'm all over the place, you guys, and the reason is some stuff happened this weekend, and I did not have the time to sit down and like really organize this very well, but I didn't want to, I didn't want to hold out on you, okay? So now you guys remember, if you were around for Quilt Nerding, when we were reading Quilt Making in America, which was it was a bunch of papers from AQSG's Uncoverings Journal from 1980 to 1989. Papers were all written during that like 9-year time period. And one of Mary Kay Waldvogel's papers was in there, and it was about Lindsay quilts. And we had a lot of discussion about Lindsay. You may have heard the term Linsey Woolsey, and that was, a term that was given to a mixed material sort of, right? Yeah, Linsey Woolsey. Well, the quilts that Mary Kay studied and documented, the women, it was a very specific geographical region, Tennessee, Kentucky. If you went to seminar last year, AQSG seminar last year in Louisville, or if you have the Kentucky quilt documentation book, you would know what a Lindsay quilt looks like. There's on the very front of the Kentucky book, there is this sort of red and green quilt, and that is made out of Lindsay. Now, here's the interesting thing about Lindsay and Linsey Woolsey. There is no linen in Lindsay or Linsey Woolsey. It is actually cotton and wool. And the warp. So the warp is the up and down threads. That is what you put. That's what you put on the loom. That's the starting of the loom is the warp. That would be cotton. And then what you weave across is wool. And so it's funny, in Mary Kay's paper, and she actually said this the other night, the proper terminology would be cottonsy woolsy. But for whatever reason, they call it Lindsay or Linsey Woolsey. And what they think the etymology of Lindsay is actually from a locale in the UK where there was this type of weaving done. And so and I can't remember what the town name was. It was something close to Lynn something. In any event, that's where they think it came from. But for all intents and purposes, the folks in this region of the country of the U.S. called this Lindsay. And I think Mary Kay said when she was interviewing somebody and was like, well, I've heard of Linsey Woolsey. And like, no, honey, we call these Lindsay. Yes, it was someplace in, right word nerd. Mary Kay needs to get in there. Yes, it was related to the location where the weaving originated, and it's some place in the UK. It's Linfordshire. That's not what it is, but it's something like that. Anyway, these are the quilts. And her presentation was actually about the Walker sisters. And here's something for you to Google, and I'm sure there's Wikipedia on it, but also the National Park Service would have a lot of information about them. They were the Walker sisters. They were longtime residents in the Great Smoky Mountains, And they were essentially an attraction for the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Their family had a land grant, and when the Department of the Interior was started and places were being designated national parks, this area of the Great Smoky Mountains, Department of Interior bought all these people out, and to create this park, this national park. And the walkers were like, no, thank you, we'll stay. And so they ended up becoming like an attraction at the park because they didn't want to leave. So she has done all kinds of research on, they left behind about 6 quilts, and there's all kinds of pictures of them that the national park has. And she had the privilege of going through the remains, after the last Walker sister passed away. She was able to, at first they cleared out everything, they sent it to a national park archive, and then they got it back there in Tennessee. And so she was able to go in, and when they brought it back to Tennessee from the archive and go through the things. And so she's seen, up close and personal, all of these quilts that were in their pictures and things. So their story was just fascinating. And then she had her collection of Lindsay quilts. And so this is a close-up of, I think this is the back of one of them. And it's just really interesting looking fabric. Now, when you look at, it, they're just sort of homespun looking. But when you touch them, you can feel that the fabric is kind of thick, and as homespun fabric tends to be sort of thick and kind of nubby, and unless you have really, really fine threads, this is what you're going to get. They're just really interesting, and they don't come in a lot of colors. And some of this you see some more color here in the center piecing here, and it's because there are some non-Lindsay in there, but like all of this brown here and all of this sort of coral colored stripe was probably originally more of like a red. That's Lindsay. And these women literally, we're talking so I think the last one died in the 60s. The eldest sister died in the 60s, or the longest lived sister. These women, throughout the 20th century, they were starting to dress more modern, but part of their big draw was that they were living in this, in this mountain cabin, still weaving the fabric to make their own dresses and things. So they were like this very anomaly, I guess, during a time when progress was being made elsewhere. They were kind of like the holdback. This is a piece of Lindsay that is just like a cover, like a sheet, kind of a coverlet sort of thing, like a blanket maybe. Mary Kay said she bought this off of somebody that had a big stack of them in their home, and she went and visited them and was like, I think I really need that. And so she haggled with them and bought it. This piece of fabric here, I don't know if I took a better picture of it. No. This is actually a petticoat or a skirt. And you guys, I just rubbing my hands over this thing, so itchy. So itchy. This top part, I think, is like a chambray, and then it has this tape, like a cotton tape at the top. But the rest of it, this little slightly darker, is the scratchy black wool that you can imagine. But my gosh, it must have been warm. And I think, if you're wearing this kind of thing with like stockings and maybe like an underskirt or something, the part that's really touching your waist here is cotton. So, maybe not a whole lot of this is actually touching your bare skin. So it's probably very warm. But yeah, I would not want that like rubbing against me all day if I had to have it against my bare skin. It was something else. But this blanket thing, it was very, very pretty. At first glance, looking at this, I think of those beautiful striped Mexican blankets that, you can still buy those today, or the Navajo blankets. They're, beautiful stripes, and it's very thin. It's very lightweight, but oh, so scratchy. It just, touching it, it definitely, you felt the wool. There was no like, is this wool or linen? No, you knew it was wool. It was definitely wool. And then this is the back of one of the quilts. And look at this weaving. The Walker family were weavers by trade. So they, they weren't just weaving their fabric for their clothes for fun. They were weaving to make a living. They made those coverlets, those beautiful coverlets that are, go back into colonial times here in the U.S. And they were weavers of those and, their own fabrics. So this just, I had to get up close and personal with this. And you look at, this is I guess some type of twill weave. I'm not a weaver. I have beyond little pot holder looms. I have never done any weaving, but I understand the general gist of it. But I don't know how you get a pattern like this. I know it's over and under different numbers, but this was just stunning to me that, they wove this. And look at it. Just, I don't have words for it. It's just so pretty. It was just a different picture, another picture. And then this was where they had made there was a little hole and they made a little repair with a different fabric that looks kind of like it's the same colors, but it has a different weave. I thought that was interesting. And then this is the front of that quilt. And like Mary Kay said, that you're not going to find a whole lot of variety in colors with these because they were dyed and then, woven right there at home. This was interesting how they pieced. They gotten this pieced to make the full strip. When you weave your own fabric, you're not gonna waste it. You're gonna use every little bit of it you can. And then this is, let's see, did I skip one? No. This is the whole quilt. Somebody was behind it. It just, very pretty quilt. Very masculine looking, My mom was like, I think when I've made quilts or made things for like my husband and things, the, brown and blue are very common colors that you would use. And this certainly has it. And then this is the other quilt that was on the other side that Mary Kay I took this picture while she was lecturing. And then she talked about some southern quilts as well, but these were the Lindsay quilts were the main draw there. I think that's the last one. Yeah. So, very interesting and exciting stuff. Okay. More show and tell. So, Leah and her helpers. And Arlene, I don't know if you were involved in any of this or if you were specifically helping just with the retreat, but Leah and her crew make goodies for the goodie bags. I was like, first of all, I am always grateful for a goodie bag. I love a goodie bag. Anything you have that you want to share with me and put in a goodie bag, I am like thrilled. But they made cute little things. Look at this. It's a little like, little doodad boat. And I've seen these in magazines, the patterns to make them. They're fairly simple, but this is the kind of thing like, do you ever have the time to make yourself one? No. Oops, I just pulled this stuff off. But yeah, so it starts out flat and it's got, the buttons on the corners and then this little piece of stretchy stuff. And yeah, I know Susan, it sounded like Susan and Leo they probably start sewing right after one retreat ends and start sewing for the next one. But anyway, so this was one of our gifties that we got to choose, and they were all different, all different fabrics, and we got to choose which one we wanted. And my mom, of course, chose purple because she loves purple. But I chose this one. I thought this one was neat. And then they made us these little tea wallets. So it kind of looks like a needle case, but on the inside, it's a little wallet for tea. Isn't that precious? And I could be wrong, but I feel like this might be a Liberty print. I'm not sure. Isn't it cute? This little town, so sweet. Um, yeah, isn't it an adorable idea? And even like, if you're not a person to carry around tea, once you've had the tea, like these little pockets, you could use this for anything. I was thinking, like little cards of thread and things. I have like some my Sashiko thread and stuff would fit in there on those because they're kind of on a wider card. So, it's a great little organizer. And like just what a cute idea, right? Yes, yeah, it's a word burner. Yeah, I know you're a tea person, so this would be perfect. A couple tea bags, you put some sugar packets, whatever your sweetener or whatever in there. Yeah, but just what a sweet idea. And I know all of us struggle. All of us that so struggle with having like precious scraps of fabric that you don't want to use. You're like, oh, I don't want to cut it up. I don't, and I don't want to make a whole quilt just to showcase this one piece of fabric. But little doodads like this, something very sweet that just would hold something precious. That's a nice way to use up a really precious piece of fabric, I think. To, I think of some of the Liberty I have that I'm like, I don't want to cut that up for something. I could make a little tea wallet out of it, or I could make a needlebook out of it or something. So I thought that was so sweet. And then we got fabric. Ah, I love fabric. These are the types of prints that I don't normally buy. So like I would not necessarily walk into a fabric store, a quilt shop, and buy these. So I always think it's fun to go on retreat or go to some kind of event where you do get some swag and challenge yourself to use this, and use it in your own way. I always think that I get great ideas when I receive things like this, and it's a chance to step out of your box a little bit, especially when I realize all of the fabric I have is pink. When I go through and I'm like, oh, I need some purple. Pink, 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 pink. I don't have any purple. So I love getting new fabric just to try things with. So that was a fun little treasure. Oh, and one of the retreat attendees she does a lot of stuff with early 20th century. She's a big feed sack person, and she brought feed sacks for us. So this was one of our retreat treasures. We got to choose a feed sack. This is the first time I have owned a full feed sack. No, that's not true. I'm lying. My mother gave me a full feed sack a while back, but this is the second feed sack I've ever owned. I have lots of feed sacks, like scraps and bits, but this is my first full-sized one. And what a generous thing to do, right? To reach into your collection and pull out some, treasures like this to give away. I thought that was so nice. And I mean, this is the kind of thing that you if you want to go buy these, you're going to spend a little bit of money on them. They're not, they're not going to break the bank, but feed sacks are very, very collectible, and people want them. So they've definitely gone up in price, if you're out there scouting them out. So I thought this was just such a sweet present to give to the attendees. And then, as I mentioned, the triplets were there. And if you're not familiar with Lori Lee and Kay Triplet, they have an immense quilt collection. They actually have their quilt collection split in two at two different facilities. And then we're talking like climate control and everything. The stuff they have is like the nice stuff. And it's kind of crazy to say, but they have a lot of, because they have a lot of money invested, they keep them in these separate facilities so that if there's ever a fire or any kind of disaster that takes out one of their, properties, then the other one is at least still there. And they have, in addition to the chintz reproduction stuff they have some Dutch reproduction fabric. And I know Word and Bird Nerd, I don't know if you're still doing the Passport series with Quilt Folk, but they just recently did the Dutch one with, what is her name? Wileen Hammer I can't remember her last name. I'm so terrible with names and stuff. But she's the lady that did the Millefiori quilt. You know, the one it's the very small hexes and diamonds, and they're just these beautiful, beautiful quilts. They did a piece with her, a segment with her in the last passport class, which was the Dutch quilts. So I thought I should probably get going on that. I didn't buy the Dutch fabrics that Quilt Folk offered, but I picked up a few from the triplets to be able to do a little bit of work on that quilt. So it's going to be very small. I started binding the Hawaii one. And to back up a little bit, if you're not familiar, Quilt Folk is, of course, a wonderful quilting magazine, and they've done this passport series with Kay Walsh and Jenny Smith, who are out of the UK. Oh yes, I know Beatrix Potter's coming up. I'm so excited for that one. But their passport series is taking them to a bunch of different places. They went to Hawaii, Wales, Provence, the Netherlands, Scotland. And so all of the quilt projects that they go to are all different. They're all based on, you know, something that's special about that area, or a special quilter, you know, somebody who's well known from that area. Like the Scottish one, it wasn't necessarily about making Scottish quilts. It was about the techniques that a particular Scottish quilter uses. So they've all been really fascinating. I've done 5 of them and have only halfway made 3 of the projects. So, you know, I think it's important when you're going to take classes to at least get some of the work done. So that's what these are for. I thought, well, I've you guys can peer pressure me and ask me, have you done it, Stephanie? Have you done your work? So that's what those are for. Then you guys, as if all of the wonderfulness of the retreat and the goodie bags and the swag and the gifties and the wonderful speakers wasn't enough, darn it if there isn't a really great antique store not far. So Mom and I had some time to kill before we had to get to, head back here. So we went in there. I practiced restraint, but they had lots of neat things. And it's funny how, you know, I spent all that time in Adamstown, Pennsylvania recently going to some of the antique shops with, you know, our friend Jill. The antiques out in California there's like the same but different. There are the things I think that are really popular right now, like Pyrex. And, you know, quilts, of course, are always popular. But some of the other things, like I guess just because the history of California has a different history than we do on the East Coast. You know, their length of time of history, you know, of material culture history is different. And so some of the collectible things that they have out there are just different than what we have. But I know I said I was not going to add any more animals to the menagerie. But this little guy was like, I need to be part of your family. And so this little cat was brought home. It's not in super duper great condition. Got some moth holes, which tells me it's real wool felt for one. But it needed to come home. So I bought him or her. We don't know. And then check this out. Oh yes, Word and Bird Nerd. I am going to Penn Dry Goods. Yes, that's what it's the last 2 days of this month. Jill will be there, and a number of our friends will be there. So, are you thinking about coming up? If you're thinking about coming up, let us know. I think Tish, Quilt Tish, you guys know she's a regular here. She's thinking about coming down. So keep us posted if you'll be there, because we get together for dinner and show and tell and all kinds of stuff outside of oh good it's I know it's probably a bit of a haul for you, but if you are up in this area, I mean, I know you have connections up here, it's not too terribly far from Baltimore. So, well, first of all, to back up a little bit, Mary Kay brought me some treasures and things for my research, and she brought me this. And she said, it's not in great shape, but I have, you know, I put it I put quilts in it sometimes. It's a pillowcase, right? Probably made sometime between, you know, the 1940s and the 70s probably. It's, you know, the colonial lady. She's like kind of the grown-up version of Sunbonnet Sue. And so I said, of course I want it. It's a gift. I always love a gift. And I also like to put quilts in pillowcases. It's a great way to store them. And what better way to store, to have a pillowcase, but like a cute one, right? So yes, my sweet, sweet Mary Kay brought me this. And then Kate goes to the antique store. And look what I found. Another one. So it's not quite exactly the same pattern. And see, that's the fascinating thing about Sunbonnet Sue and all of her spawn. I don't know what else to call it. But yes, it's another one. And that is a little bit of what I'm kind of doing with, you could see them. Aren't they sweet? Aren't they cute? As I'm searching for the Sunbonnet Sue stuff, I know I kind of get the eye rolls sometimes with Sunbonnet Sue. But also, I meet people that are like, oh my gosh, I am as obsessed with Sunbonnet Sue as you are. Rebecca, she brought me my little present, but then she also let me take pictures of a whole bunch of magazines and things she has. Modern Priscilla, which I think I've read some Modern Priscilla stuff to you guys before. I've shared something. It was one of those needlework magazines from the early 20th century, like Needlework Arts and stuff. And there were some really cute Sunbonnet Sue type of projects in a couple of issues she had. And so I took pictures of those, and then, like I said, people find out and they're like, well, I have this Sunbonnet Sue stuff's just sitting around. I don't want it. You take it, Cake. And I'm not going to say like, no, you keep that. No, I couldn't possibly. I'm going to be like, are you sure? Are you positive? Do you want money for it? No? All right. I'll take it. I'm never going to turn down Sunbonnet Sue. So that was, I thought, pretty neat. This one came to me from Tennessee. I don't know where Mary Kay got it. I don't know that she ever even said, whether she remembered or not. It's probably something she's had for a while, just, putting quilts in there. And then this one came from California. So, and it is really funny that when you look at all the Sunbonnet Sue stuff and you look at the things that clearly people made from a pattern, and some of those patterns are very well, frequently published. And then there's just the oddball things that you don't know why, you don't know how, but somehow or another people are like, I want to make a Sunbonnet Sue-ish thing and I don't have a pattern, but here's what I'm going to do. And they do it and you're just like, God bless you. And it's so fun to look at those things. And, I think sometimes people, I don't want to see people look down on my research. Hey, Eva. I don't want to see people look down on my research. But, a lot of the quilt research, of my predecessors has been in things like chintz or, like Lindsay, these kind of like very old stuff, things that are like, you have to go on a kind of an expedition to find. Whereas I can't swing a cat without hitting Sunbonnet Sue around here. So it's because it's so ubiquitous. It's a different kind of interesting. Because seeking out the ones that are not the garden variety Sues is what I've really been doing. And just finding the iterations is really interesting. And so the lecture I'm going to give at seminar this year is about Sunbonnet Sue, but it's not about like, oh, look at these cute quilts. It's really about the concept of like, why do people like this? Why do people not like this? And kind of this transition throughout the 20th century. And speaking of wanting to kill Sunbonnet Sue, you guys, the one thing I haven't mentioned, I've talked about Mary Kay a lot. Barbara Brackman was also at this retreat. And you guys, Barbara Brackman is just delightfully kooky. I love her so much. I think she's at that point in her life, she knows that she's very well known. I mean, she is quilt history royalty, but she don't care. She's just like, she's come as you are. She's very like, she is gonna She is. Like, she's a wild one. That's the best way to describe her. She is just gonna, like, she's gonna Barbara. She will tease you. She will come up with something to pester you about. Um, and I had contacted her. Yes, down to earth. Yes. It's kind of like, it's funny, to digress a little bit. My mom took a class, took some classes from her, probably back in the early 80s. I mean, when I was young when she took those classes. And she said, I do not remember Barbara being so hilarious and just so like, bleh. Like, she doesn't care. She'll tell you anything. And I thought about it and I thought, well, back in the 80s, Barbara was really like, had built a career, and, we all know what she's famous for, which is the Encyclopedia of Quilt Patterns. She's also got the applique one too. This was a lot of work. And, at the time, I think she probably, not to say she was on her best behavior, but she probably was. She probably wasn't going to be standing in a class, like, telling gossip because, she wanted people to hire her. And I think now at this point, she's up there in years and she's not publishing anymore. And she just wants to be invited to the party, I think. And she's so fun. And I learned some serious gossip about that, the Sunsets on Sunbonnet Sue quilt. So if you're not familiar with it, Google it. You'll find it. It's out there. It's called The Sunsets on Sunbonnet Sue. And it was a Kansas guild. And I can't remember. You guys probably know what it was called. It was something union. It wasn't just like a quilt guild. They had a funny name. They were kind of smart Alex, but anyway, she told me all kinds of gossip about the president, the guild president. And the guild president is the reason why they made this quilt. I cannot reveal all of the gossip here, you guys. I'm really sorry, because it's going to be in my presentation, but it is really funny. And I think it's indicative of some of the reason why people love Sunbonnet Sue, but also hate Sunbonnet Sue. Because, it is no secret, Barbara is one of the people of a group of women that were so sick of Sunbonnet Sue. Ah, thank you, Eva. Yeah, let me see if that's a good one. I can't click it from... yeah, okay. It's got that little... Yeah, if you click that little thumbnail, you can see it. Now, I asked Barbara, which one was yours? And she said, oh, I think it was the one with the arrows. But I might have also done the one where she's hanging. And, we looked at this quilt on Quilt Nerd way, way back. And I remember thinking some of the blogs are funny. Some of them are hilarious. Like the snake. There's a snake with a Sue-shaped lump in its belly. That's funny. Here, I can do my other screen since I pulled this up. So you can see this. I don't think I can zoom in. Nah, I think this is as big as I can get, but I mean, you could see the things that are happening here. She's being boiled in a pot. She's hit by lightning on train tracks, lost in space. I think this might have been Jonestown. She drank the Kool-Aid. Like, 3 Mile Island. 3 Mile Island had just happened I think it was the year or the year after they made this quilt. 3 Mile Island happened and they either made the quilt that year or the following year. And I was like, y'all, too soon. But yeah, here she's dying of radiation poisoning. So anyway, this was the sentiment about Sue. Seamsters Local 500. Yes, thank you, Lawrence, Kansas. And Betty Hagerman was the guild president. And Betty Hagerman loved Sunbonnet Sue. I have her book. I considered it like the Sunbonnet Sue Bible because she researched Sunbonnet Sue from the very beginning, which was the Sunbonnet Babies, all the way to, I want to say the last patterns that are in her book are like 1978, 79. So kind of around the same time this quilt was made. So, um, yeah, Betty was not, I found out Betty was not the person I thought she was. So, um, you guys are going to have to wait until after seminar this year to get the scoop. But I promise I'll do a Sunbonnet Sue version for this stream after I do it for seminar, because it's just too good not to share. Like I do have to share it far and wide because some good stuff. So last couple things, we're gonna go short today because coming back I've got a million things to do, and like I said, got some things happen this weekend that I have to give some attention to. But couple things to know. Wednesday, if you would make a murder Sue block, what would it be? Oh, that's interesting. Even nobody's ever asked me that because I don't want to murder Sue. Oh goodness. I'll have to think about that. Nobody's ever asked me that, and I have simply never allowed myself to think about it. It would have to be something funny. It would have to be, you know what? I probably would have to Google the Darwin Awards. If you guys, falling down a sinkhole, there you go. um, oh Lord. You know, I'm thinking there's not many funny deaths that happen in my neck of the woods. They're all, you know, shootings and fentanyl deaths. I think I would have to Google Abducted by Aliens is one of the ones. It's not in this quilt, but there is Abducted by Aliens in a different one. Eaten by Shark. That was another one. Trying to Kiss a Bison. I love it. I think, so the Darwin Awards are those, you know, the thing that you have to, like, you get the Darwin Award if you did something really stupid and managed to cause your death. I think I'd have to Google that and find a funny one. I don't know. I really don't know. I'll have to think about that. Taking a selfie with a bear or a man. Yeah. A man or a man eating something. Falling into a volcano. I think also that possibly I've seen something like that before, but you know, gosh, I shouldn't laugh at this, but there is this, it was a woman just recently. I'm trying to think, it's in some other part of the world. It was not here in the US, but it was a woman visiting an active volcano, and she was told, you have to stay safe. Don't keep walking over there. She kept getting closer and closer and was standing on one leg and dancing around, and then bloop, 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 she fell in. So yeah, it would have to be national park stuff. Yes. The Turons of the national parks, or one of those Darwin Awards things, I suppose. But yeah, maybe I'll make that my homework. I will make that my homework, you guys. Falling off the Nakatomi Plaza. That's a good one too. I'll make that my homework, you guys. I will tell you on Thursday. How will I kill Sue? Or how will I let Sue be killed? All right. So, you would think that my goal in life is to put myself in the poorhouse buying books. It is truly not, but somehow I feel like I'm getting close. This book was just published by the DAR. It is the exhibition book for the Sewn in America show, that exhibit that's at the DAR museum right now. And it's curated by Alden O'Brien. And Alden is one of the 6 know-it-alls, if you are not aware. And she is a curator at the DAR museum. And she is an amazing historian. And this book, oh, you guys, I literally got it in the mail this morning. I flipped through it, and already I'm like, when can I like carve out the time to start reading? Because this is not a read it a page at a time before I go to bed. Like, I really want to soak in this one. There's so much interesting looking stuff in here. And, you know, it's not just quilts. In fact, it's not quilts at all. Quilts are included, but we've got a fashion sewing, we've got samplers, got all kinds of stuff about, sewing. So, I had to buy it. I think it costs $35 from the DAR, so it's a pricier book, but for Mother's Day, ask your kids. If you don't have kids, buy yourself one anyway. It looks like such a good book. It was one of the raffle prizes at the retreat, and I was very excited because I was like, oh, I'll put all of my tickets in that one because I wanted this book really bad. And lo and behold, our friend Rebecca won it. I had forgotten that last night when we were talking about it, and I was like, oh, it was Rebecca. Rebecca got it. Why didn't I like mug her on the way out of the retreat? But alas, I bought my own copy. So it is good stuff. So I just wanted to put that on your radar if you're looking for a new good book to read. It does have a lot of pictures, but it's got a lot of text too because these are essays. So, yeah. So I'm plugging the DAR and I'm plugging Alden. It's good stuff. Also, for those of you that are thinking about coming to the Penn Dry Goods show, Alden will be there, and she's doing a lecture on this. I did not have AFO. Oh my gosh, Druid. Oh my gosh, you guys crack me up. So, I can't even. So anyway, Alden O'Brien. The other thing I wanted to mention is that in our reading, as we were reading Dawn's book over on Quilt Nerding, she gave us some prizes as well for drawings. And one of the prizes, which, you know what, Rebecca also won. Rebecca, I don't think you're here live, but if you are watching at some point, guard your stuff because we're coming for you. But this is one of Dawn's patterns. It is the Mary Weatherwax heirloom quilt. And what I have decided to do, I have not done a 100 days project in a really long time, and I want to do one just because it is, when life gets a little crazy, when you have like this one little thing that is very constant, and in the case of a 100-day project, you have whatever your little thing is every day to do. It's kind of a good thing, at least for me, to have like that one little constant. And things are a little crazy for me right now. So I decided I'm going to do this for my 100-day project. Now, there are more than 100 blocks in here. I will tell you that. I can't remember how many there are. Oh, she's got them numbered by row, so I don't have a total number. It's in here somewhere. One of you guys might know. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and do my 100-day project. But what I wanted to know is, do you guys have any interest in doing this with me? Now, I need to let Dawn know. I'm not going to be teaching anything. I could certainly give you some tips and tricks on like needle turn applique or buttonhole stitch applique, whatever. I'm not going to teach how to make this quilt, but I thought it would be fun, if you want to do this with me and make some of these. Of course, you will have to buy the pattern. It's $28. It's on Dawn's site. I'll pop that in the chat in a second. But I just wanted to throw it out there. The quilt itself is a red and green quilt, but she's got some kind of cool. Well, not kind of cool, some very cool examples of ones that other people have made in the back here. And they are very different than, what the quilt itself looks like. So it's essentially these little tiny blocks. And you can make them bigger. If you're new to applique, there's a bunch of different kind. You can do a raw edge applique, so it's not something that would necessarily be like super taxing. So I just wanted to throw it out there. I'm gonna put it on the Quilt Nerding Facebook page as well, and you do need to belong to that. It's a private message group. But all you have to do is ask us if you can join. So just look for Quilt Nerding on Facebook, and then we'll get you in there. But anyway, I just wanted to throw it out there and think about it. And if you don't want to participate, that's cool too. But I will certainly share what I'm doing with it. This is the kind of thing where, each of these little blocks is, little, or if, you wanted to enlarge them, you can. But we could just cut out all your backgrounds, make them all the same background color, whether it's white or some other color. And then, choose if you're going to maybe do a couple of other colors, or if you're going to make it totally scrappy. I think I'm going to go totally scrappy. So it's the kind of thing that sort of like English paper piecing, you could just have in a baggie and just have it with you, in your bag while you travel around, and just stitch on it whenever. So I figure I can commit to probably one of these a day. And worst case, the beautiful thing about a 100-day project that people don't have to know is that you can work ahead sometimes to have a few in your pocket for the days that you have to skip. Wink, wink. So that's what I did the last time I did a 100-day project. Is there were a few days where I would like make 2 or 3, so that if something got hairy, on a weekend or on a Monday or whatever, I could just say, well, here, I did this one. This is today's, even though I did it like yesterday. So anyway, just throwing that out for you. I'm going to wrap up. This has been very disorganized. And Arlene, I know this was, I think, your first time watching. I'm sorry. I'm usually a little more organized than this, but I'll be back on Thursday with some more regularly scheduled type of stuff. So just to remind you, Wednesday night, Needlework Nights. Keep an eye out for that. If you aren't already following Quilt Nerding, be sure to follow Quilt Nerding on Instagram and on YouTube. Oh, sorry, and Facebook. And then I will be back on Thursday. So I love you guys bunches. Thank you so much for being here. You know that I can't do this without you. I mean, I could, but I would be yelling into the void at nobody, and I would look like a crazy person. So it's good that you're here. And in all seriousness, though, I couldn't do this without you guys. And I learned so much from you guys. I love you guys so much. You're the absolute best. And I thank you so much. And so I will catch you Wednesday night if you're going to join us. And if not, I will hopefully see you on Thursday. So take care, you guys. Have a wonderful week. And mwah!